Good afternoon. We're back with another episode of the Lord of the Rings LCG Progression Series, and today is a lore and quest guide for Dungeons Deep and Caverns Dim, the third quest of the Hobbit saga. So let's take a look. After killing the Great Goblin, Bilbo's companions fought to win their escape from the goblins. By the time they realized that Bilbo had been lost in the darkness, it was too late to turn back and search for him. So if you recall, so far in the Hobbit saga, we proceeded from the Shire east, had an encounter with the trolls at the Trollshaws, and then over the High Pass, where the party, Bilbo, Thorin, Oakenshield, and the dwarves were captured by goblins in the mountains. After defeating the Great Goblin in Over the Misty Mountains Grim, this covers the portion of The Hobbit where Bilbo was separated from the party and found the ring. At that point, this was not known to the reader, but it was the One Ring, which would later be destroyed by Frodo. In this section of the book, Bilbo and Gollum play a game together in which Bilbo is attempting to stall for time by playing a riddles game with Gollum. Stall for time meaning delay Gollum from killing him, as Gollum was once a creature similar to a hobbit, and so he still had an interest in riddles, even though he had been corrupted by the ring for a long time. So this is an attempt to put that into quest form. For the setup, add Lake in the Cavern to the staging area. So let's go through the rest of the lore for the quest. During the confusion, Bilbo stumbled down a tunnel and into Gollum's cave. There the Hobbit had to outwit the creature Gollum in a dangerous riddle contest to discover the way out. To everyone's surprise, Bilbo Baggins rejoined his companions on the eastern side of the Misty Mountains. However, their celebration was cut short by the chilling sound of wolves howling close by. To the frightened hobbit, it seemed that they had escaped from the goblins only to be eaten by wargs. So, for the setup, it's pretty unique. Add Lake in the Cavern to the staging area. Create a riddle area with stage 2A and follow the setup instructions on that card. So you have two separate staging areas in this quest. In one staging area, you have Bilbo, the magic ring, and Gollum. And all they're going to do together in that staging area is do riddles, a mechanic which I'll explain in just a moment. Then you have a normal staging area in stage 1, in which you must get 14 progress and you have to reveal one encounter card per player. One additional encounter card per player during the staging step, so you don't have to reveal anything to start, but you reveal 2 per staging step, much like the Phase 2 of Journey along the Anduin, second quest of the core set. Lake in the Cavern has threat equivalent to twice the number of players in the game, so for a true solo player it's 2 threat. You can't travel there, and after players advance to stage 3 you move it from the game. Really its purpose is to set the stage for the quest, and also there are some cards which have an additional effect if there's a cave location in play. For example, Goblin Axeman gets +1 attack for each cave location. So the purpose of this location is just to provide ever-present threat against you and buff certain cards while it's in play. That is before you escape from the caverns in stage 3 and attempt to escape down the mountain. So, you can only advance to stage 3 if you have progressed through stage 1 and 2 simultaneously. So should you get 14 or 16 progress or whatever on stage 1 before beating stage 2, you cannot advance to stage 3 yet. You will just essentially be treading water in the stage 1 staging area while you wait for the riddles game to complete. It's also possible you can complete the riddles game first and then be treading water there until stage 1 is complete, but it's much more likely in my experience that you'll complete stage 1 first while waiting for the riddles. We'll go over the riddles last. Once the stage 1 and 2 are complete, you gain control of Bilbo Baggins. While he's in this special riddle staging area, you don't have control of him, but he does gain resources normally. When revealed, reveal one encounter card per player and add it to the staging area. Gollum engages the first player. Damage from undefended attacks made by Gollum must be placed on Bilbo Baggins. All riddle effects are ignored and treachery cards gain surge. So let's go over the main mechanic of this quest, which is riddles. Players cannot advance to stage 3A unless both 1B and 2B are complete. Progress tokens cannot be added to or removed from this quest except by answering riddles. Cards in the riddle area are immune to player card effects and cannot leave the riddle area except by quest effects, which means you can't do damage to Gollum while he's in the riddle area. You can't heal Bilbo while he's in the riddle area. He can gain resources normally, and you can use the magic ring when answering a riddle. Well, let's go over the riddle mechanic. For the sake of demonstration, I've opened up one of my decks. So, in each encounter phase, here's how riddles work. In each encounter phase, you reveal 2 cards. So let's reveal 2 cards. On this card, you see a normal card. Normal encounter card with a shadow effect should it be a shadow card. Nothing special about that. On this card, you see a normal shadow card, and also at the bottom you see riddle. When you see a card with riddle, when it's revealed during the staging step, or revealed whenever, I think, but primarily you're going to see them during the staging step, you can choose to either reveal this card normally. In this case, if you choose that option, the Wild Wargs would go to the staging area as a 3 threat, 3 attack, 2 shield, 3 health enemy with a forced effect of if Wild Wargs is dealt a shadow card with a riddle, it gets +2 attack. Or you can choose to do the riddle on the card. If you choose to do the riddle on the card, it doesn't go to the staging area. Instead, you follow the riddle text. The first player names a card type, shuffles his deck, and discards the top 2 cards. So the different card types are ally, attachment, event, at this point in the game if you're playing progression style. So I would, for example, name enemy, and I discard the top 2 cards of my deck. For each of those cards that matches, for each enemy I discarded, I would place 1 progress token on stage 2. There are 0 enemies, so I place 0 progress tokens. If I had discarded those 2, there'd be 1 enemy, and I'd place 1 progress token on phase 2. Now, if you should answer a riddle and fail to find at least 1 match, as I did the first attempt, Gollum attacks Bilbo Baggins. Do not deal a shadow card. His 2 attack against Bilbo's 1 shields would deal 1 damage. So you have 3 fails before you're out on the riddles. Bilbo's magic ring can be used to help because Bilbo will gain a resource every round, and while answering a riddle you can spend 1 resource to discard an additional player card from the top of the deck. You can also exhaust Bilbo's magic ring and raise each player's threat by 2 to add 1 resource to Bilbo Baggins' resource pool. So that's intended to help you with the riddles. For example, with my first attempt when I drew 2 cards or discarded 2 cards with no riddle effect, I could then spend a Baggins resource if I had any, discard 1 more card, and that would place 1 progress and prevent Gollum from making an attack for the failed riddle. As you may have noted, placing 1 progress per round on the quest would take 9 rounds to complete. And it's certainly not going to take 9 rounds to pass phase 1, which means phase 1 is going to be over much quicker. Which means anytime you reveal cards from the encounter deck and you get a riddle, I would recommend doing that riddle. Because otherwise, if you decline riddles, sometimes it just is going to take a long time to complete the quest. Now, you can use Baggins resources to gain additional cards even though you've already passed. For example, if I have 4 Baggins resources, this isn't a riddle card, but let's say I do reveal a riddle card, which is name a sphere, and I named Spirit. Shuffled my deck, discard the top card, and it did match, so I placed one resource. I can go ahead and spend more Baggins resources to reveal more cards even though I already have passed the riddle. And that you would do if you see a riddle that's particularly easy, that you think is particularly easy, and you have a good chance to place more progress than what you otherwise would have gotten if you didn't use Baggins resources. So let's say I see one and I think, oh, I have a lot of spirit cards in my deck. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 3 Baggins resources and discard 3 more cards and see if I get any more spirit cards. And there I get 2 more spirit cards, and that allows me to move things along and progress faster. So you do want to use the magic ring to gain Baggins resources as much as possible. Then you want to wait until you see a riddle that you think you have a good chance of making a lot of progress on, and then use your Baggins resources, while also saving enough Baggins resources in case you encounter a really tough riddle, which is possible because you can, for example, get a riddle which requires you to name like a sphere, a cost, and a type. So you'd have to name like 3 cost, spirit, ally, and since that's so narrowly focused, the likelihood that you're going to fail the riddle is pretty high. And if you get several of those in a row, you can be required to spend your Baggins resources just to stay alive. So you don't want to spend all your Baggins resources when you see a good riddle to pounce on, but you want to spend all that you think you can spare. And typically I'll try to leave maybe 2 Baggins resources on Bilbo in case of emergencies. 1 or 2 seems good. Like this riddle, for example, the first player names a sphere and cost. So I'd name like 1 cost spirit or something, and then try for it, or 3 cost spirit. And if I got a 3 cost spirit card, then great. But that's a tougher one, and sometimes you can be required to name all 3. Spirit, sphere, or sphere, cost, and type. So I'd have to name 3 cost spirit ally to pass that one, and it's so narrowly focused that you fail it pretty often and have to put a damage on Bilbo. So save Baggins resources, 1 or 2 typically is my recommendation, for in case of a really tough riddle and in case you don't have any damage left to place on Bilbo. But generally speaking, use the ring as much as you can to gain Baggins resources, and use them when you see a particularly easy riddle and try to make a lot of progress on the quest all at once, so that you don't take 9 turns or more to complete the quest. This quest can be a bit annoying in that it's highly luck-based. Typically when I'm playing this quest, I will have a copy of my deck list open on another screen so that I can look and see what the most common sphere type is, the most common cost, the most common type, card type. It's very important to go into this quest knowing exactly what's in your deck. If you're going to play live and not have a deck list in front of you, I would recommend counting your deck in advance and knowing which sphere is the most common, which cost is the most common, which card type is the most common. If you're going to be the one doing the riddles, it's always the first player, so everyone's going to be doing the riddles at some point. I think it's always the first player, right? I'm going to have to check on that. Yeah, it's going to be the first player. Always the first player, so each player should know the cards in the deck, at least know the most common card types, so that you can maximize your chances of solving the riddle. Because if you go into the deck having no real clue what the most common sphere or cost is in your deck and you just take a guess at it, you may struggle on this quest. It's pretty important to know your deck going in. So take a moment to count the cards in your deck and look at how the most common sphere, most common cost, the most common type, and possibly even some combination of all 3. Like you should know which is the most common of the, if you had to choose like cost, sphere, and type, which one would you choose, which gives you the best odds to choose, and so forth. Pretty important, because otherwise you can be stuck at phase 2 forever and everyone will just get kind of annoyed. So good to have knowledge of your deck going into this one. There's not much else you can say about this quest in terms of strategy. The riddling part is by far the most important. The phase 1 part isn't that difficult. It's just one encounter card per player. Or this is one additional encounter card per player, so you can get up to 8 encounter cards. But a lot of them are going to go toward riddles, because you're going to choose to solve a lot of the riddles, so not as difficult as it seems. It's possible to lose by failing out of phase 1, but in my experience it's very rare. It's more common if you fail this quest to fail because of the riddles. So that's the part you want to prepare for by knowing your deck and strategizing concerning the Pagan's resources. Once you pass phase 1 and phase 2, if you have 9 progress and 14, then you can proceed on to phase 3, where Bilbo is under your control. Gollum is engaged with you. You can tank him or kill him if you want. Depends on how thematically you want to play, I guess. All riddle effects are ignored and all treachery cards gain surge. A lot of the treacheries have something to do with riddles, which isn't going to apply anymore, so that's why they gain surge. They become blank cards, essentially. When you make 16 progress, you've won. But the main gimmick and the main challenge of this quest is the riddles, and there's not a lot you can do about the challenge of the riddles except to know what's in your deck. So it can be a little frustrating. However, it is very thematic, and I really like the design of the quest from that standpoint, from the standpoint of theming. Also of note, once you advance to stage 3, you take Lake and the Caverns out of play. Moved from the game, actually. So, that's the final quest of the Hobbit saga. It's an interesting one. Somewhat frustrating sometimes, but definitely interesting. So, thanks for watching.